The Gospel of Mark, chapter 7. I want to start today by asking a question. Have you ever focused so much on doing things right that you missed the bigger picture? Maybe you followed every rule, hit every mark, but still felt something was off deep down. It's easy to get caught up in the outward actions, but true fulfillment and transformation come from within. So today, we'll dive into one of the most profound teachings in the Bible, the Gospel of Mark, chapter 7, where Jesus reminds us that the condition of our hearts is far more important than external appearances. Now, in this chapter, Jesus shakes up everything people thought they knew about purity and righteousness. He challenges the religious leaders and even performs miraculous healings. But through it all, his focus is on the heart. If we can grasp the truths he teaches here, our lives will never be the same. Beyond rituals, what defiles us? So, the Pharisees and teachers of the law approached Jesus with a complaint. They noticed that his disciples were eating without performing the traditional hand-washing ritual. Now, to the Pharisees, these traditions were sacred, passed down for generations. They were convinced that following these rituals kept them pure before God. But Jesus responded with a powerful statement. Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you hypocrites, as it is written, "These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules." Now, Jesus was telling them that they were missing the point. It wasn't the external rituals that mattered to God, but the internal state of their hearts. They were so focused on outward cleanliness that they ignored the spiritual corruption inside. Jesus goes on to say that nothing outside a person can defile them. It's what comes out of a person that makes them unclean. So, let's think about that for a minute. How often do we too focus on external appearances? Whether it's following religious traditions, living up to societal expectations, or maintaining an image for others to see. We can easily lose sight of what truly matters. And Jesus is asking us to look inward. Are we harboring bitterness, pride, or judgment? Are our hearts aligned with God's love and grace? Or are we just going through the motions? Jesus wants us to focus less on outward actions and more on the motives and attitudes that drive them. The heart's true condition. As Jesus explained further to his disciples, he made it clear that it's not about the physical things we encounter or consume. Instead, it's the thoughts and intentions that arise from within us that can lead to sin. In verse 21 to 23, he says, "For from within, out of the heart of men, come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All these evils come from inside and defile a person." Jesus is warning us about the power of our inner worlds. Our hearts are like a garden, and whatever we plant there will eventually grow. If we allow negative thoughts like envy, pride, or anger to take root, they will sprout into destructive behaviors. But if we plant seeds of love, compassion, and humility, our lives will bear fruit that reflects God's goodness. So, think about your own heart. What have you been cultivating there? The heart is where everything begins. Our words, our actions, our relationships, and Jesus is calling us to keep a close watch over what we allow to grow within us. It's not enough to behave well on the outside, as if our hearts, because pardon me, collect my thoughts for a second. It's not enough to behave well on the outside if our hearts are full of resentment, lust, or hatred. We must daily seek God's help in renewing our hearts and filling them with the things that are good, pure, and life-giving. Breaking down barriers. The Canaanite woman. One of the most moving stories in this chapter is the encounter between Jesus and the Syrophoenician woman, a Gentile. In Jewish culture, Gentiles were considered outsiders, and many Jews didn't associate with them. Yet this woman, a mother desperate to see her daughter healed from an unclean spirit, approached Jesus, pleading for help. At first, Jesus responded in a way that might seem surprising. He said, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." Now he was referring to the Jews as children and Gentiles as outsiders. But this woman's faith was unwavering. She humbly replied, "Lord, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." And Jesus was so moved by her response that he immediately granted her request, saying, "For such a reply, you may go. The demon has left your daughter." Now, this moment is incredibly significant because Jesus broke down cultural and religious barriers and honored the woman's faith. He showed us that no one is too far outside of God's love, mercy, and grace. And faith can break down every barrier, and God's compassion knows no bounds. So think about this. What barriers are you facing today? Do you feel like an outsider, unworthy of God's attention or blessings? The faith of this woman teaches us that no matter our background, our struggles, or the obstacles in front of us, we can always approach Jesus with faith. He welcomes us with open arms, and our trust in Him can unlock the miracles we desperately need. Humility, persistence, and faith bring us closer to God's heart. Jesus heals the deaf and mute man, restoration and wholeness. Toward the end of the Gospel of Mark, chapter 7, Jesus encounters a man who was born deaf and unable to speak clearly. This man couldn't ask for healing himself, so others brought him to Jesus. Jesus took the man aside, away from the crowd, and in an intimate moment of compassion, he touched the man's ears and tongue, saying, "Ephphatha," which means, "be opened." Immediately the man's hearing and speech were restored. Now, this healing isn't just physical, it's symbolic of how Jesus opens us up to hear the truth and speak with clarity and to live lives of wholeness. It reminds us that Jesus is always ready to take us aside, to have an intimate moment with us, and to heal the areas of our lives where we've been closed off, whether it's emotional, spiritual, or physical. So, think about it. Are there areas of your life where you feel closed off? Perhaps you've been hurt and it's affecting your ability to trust, to love, or to be open with others. Jesus wants to heal every part of us. He's not just interested in the physical, but in restoring us to spiritual and emotional wholeness as well. Take a moment to consider what parts of your life need His healing touch, and remember that He is always ready to meet you wherever you are. So, as we come out of the Gospel of Mark, chapter 7, it's clear that Jesus is challenging us to live from the heart. He's calling us to let go of surface-level faith and embrace a deeper, more authentic walk with Him. Our actions, our words, and our relationships all flow from what's inside. If our hearts are filled with love, faith, and humility, our lives will reflect the beauty of Christ. But here's the key. It starts with being honest about the state of our hearts. It starts with inviting Jesus into the areas of brokenness, bitterness, or pride, and asking him to transform us from the inside out. It starts with faith, the kind of faith that breaks down barriers and believes that nothing is too difficult for God. So, as we leave today, I challenge each of you to ask, what's in my heart? What needs to change? How can I grow in faith, love, and humility? And remember, Jesus is always ready to heal, to restore, and to lead us into a life of wholeness and freedom. So I ask you today, or more so, I want you to leave this place today transformed with a heart that reflects the love, grace, and mercy of Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you. Tomorrow we'll discuss the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8.